Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maurya Hanspal, and in this session, we're going to continue our discussion on commodities. So, in the previous session, we were trying to discuss the impact of the Russia-Ukraine crisis on the export-import business for the various countries and from the various countries. So that we tried to understand, and we came to some of the conclusions and interpretations upon the same. So, when we are trying to understand these crises that are going on, we need to understand how they are affecting the prices of the commodities. So when we talk about oil, I gave you an example of oil because ultimately a large amount of oil is imported from Russia and Ukraine, and these are what we call them as the OPEC plus countries. We call them as the OPEC plus countries. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, like we have the cartelization of the eastern countries separately, but there are also other large manufacturers apart from OPEC which also supply oil into the various countries, and Russia is one of them. So Russia belongs to the OPEC plus countries, and by plus we mean the other countries except the OPEC. So when we talk about Russia and Ukraine, that they are like one of the largest suppliers of oil. Large amount of oil pipelines and even gas pipelines have been laid, and this gas is being supplied to various European countries as well. So when this oil and natural gas is not being able to supply it in the other countries, so that can create a problem for these countries as well. Like recently, the Nordwind pipeline like the Nord Stream pipeline 2 was established through the way to Germany because in that case the Ukraine had to supply their natural gas to Germany. But that has been disrupted because of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. So these things are coming into play, or these things are coming into the foray of all these things happening in the economy. So if the supply is very less, be it your oil or natural gas, the prices of these commodities will subsequently rise. Because what used to happen, Russia had laid down its pipelines for the supplying of oil and natural gas to various countries, like various European countries and other countries as well. But now these pipelines have been disrupted, and neither the oil tankers nor the natural gas is being able to get supplied to these countries or territories and European countries specifically, be it your Europe, be it your Finland, be it your Germany. So these companies' trade can also be hampered. Obviously, not only from the European countries, these countries of Russia and Ukraine, in collaboration with each other, they used to supply to other countries as well, in West, in Asia as well, into India as well. So that has been further hampered, and the oil prices have crossed to like 107 barrels per $107 per barrel. That is again a very high price. Though the Indian companies or like when we go to fill our tanks, we have not yet seen the rise in the prices, but we can further see the rise in prices in very few days. Because the main reason which people call right now is, though I'm not a political person, but the thing is people are calling it the prices have not risen because of the elections. And once the voting is done, or maybe even before the election results are out, the prices would rise because these oil marketing companies or the oil extraction companies, as what we call them, as I told in the previous session, your Gas Authority of India Limited, your Indian Oil, and all these companies, they are taking a loss of 10 rupees per barrel. Okay, so that is the loss they have been taking, and they have been making the margin pressure for this quarter particularly. So if they are not able to pass on their prices, so they have to face further problems and which these companies cannot afford. So people believe that once these election results are out or once the voting poll is closed, the prices would be filtered. Maybe the excise duty would come down to encourage the domestic producers, but the prices would go. So either it can be a combination of either the price rise or it can be the combination of reduction in the excise duty and the rises in the prices of oil. So these things can happen. So when we talk about the further metals, Russia accounts for the largest exporter of nickel. And apart from nickel, it has its own company for the exporting nickel. The Nirlosk is there. Nirlosk. So Nirlosk is a company which is the largest producer, manufacturer, and exporter of nickel. This company, Nirlox, along with the other metals, be it aluminium, your copper, your steel, a large number of countries in the world economy are dependent upon Russia. So when Russia is not able to import these metals, export these metals basically, so that can further create problems for the other companies as well. Because nowadays, like we require metals. Because not only in India, the other countries as well, they have been focusing on their infrastructure, building more real estate, building more companies because the economy has started to open now. And once the economy has started to open, a huge capital expenditure would be made, be it any kind of capital expenditure. You need to build a home, you need metals, you need cement, and you need everything. So when this capital expenditure is done, maybe in the form of homes, highways, fibers, or anything, you require metals. And once these metals are not being able to get imported from Russia and Ukraine, it can further hamper the trade. It can hamper the economic activity also. It can further increase the price, which it is like currently being doing, and hamper the capital expenditure theme of the government as well. Because if they do not have the materials to support the capex, then how can they do it? And domestic manufacturing can take years and years to take place. Even like coming back to the point of natural gas, when natural gas is being used for a large number of fertilizers, natural gas is an input for fertilizers. If the prices of the natural gas rises, the raw material cost or the raw material prices of the inputs for the fertilizers will also rise, and that can also create some liquidity crunch within the farmers as well. Even your natural gas is also used in infrastructure as well, in capex theme as well. And now you will ask me how this natural gas is being used for the capex theme also. When a house is being constructed, apart from steel, apart from cement, apart from paints, apart from building sinks or toilets, you also require the flooring. And for the flooring, people go for the marble flooring in in the normal residential houses. I'm not talking about the interiorly well decorated houses. I'm talking about the normal residential houses. They go for marble flooring. And for the purpose of manufacturing marble, you need to have natural gas for it. And once the prices rises, it can further create problem. And even when the oil prices are rising, the diesel prices will also rise. And diesel is an essential input for the using of tractors or the engines in the farming land. So the prices of diesels are rising, the prices of the fertilizers are rising because of the input of natural gas. It can hamper trade in a very bad way. Also, when we talk about cements, coking coal is a raw material for cements. And the price for coking coal is rising because again Russia and Ukraine export coal. And once the coal is not being exported, again the scarcity of the coal would be there. And once the scarcity of the coal is there, it would be very difficult to reduce or keep the price on a steady state, and the prices would rise. So ultimately, the price of everything would come to a rise, be it your real estate, be it your infrastructure themes, and everything. But all the metals, aluminium, nickel, copper, cobalt, all these are imported from Russia. Even the wheat is being imported from Russia as well. So India is not a major importer of wheat because India exports a fair quantity of wheat. But when we talk about barley, barley is something which is being used for the alcoholic industry. So your like brews industries, your United Spirits industries. So barley is the main raw material or the ingredient to manufacture all these. That can further create a problem, right? Because these are being used for these purposes. So that thing we need to understand. Your fertilizers prices would be rising, your metals prices would be rising, your coking coal prices would be rising. So basically, if the raw material prices of everything is rising, you need to face problems. So that is the thing. And that is where people say that here the Indian companies can do better. Because if the demand is being hampered from those countries or the supply chains are disrupted, people will be shifting to India. And again, instead of calling it as a China plus one strategy, as we used to call it in the China crackdown, we can call it as a Russia Ukraine war plus one strategy. Because completely agreed, this is hampering everyone. The people are losing their lives in Ukraine, and it is a very critical situation, and that should not be done. But when something wrong happens in any of the countries or territories on the stock market, there is every person, a single person at least, who is gaining from everything. When the COVID-19 crisis happened, the pharma companies gained. Though none of us in our heart want that COVID should come back again. But these pharma companies want the COVID to come back. Because ultimately the largest earning the companies made were from pharma. A medicine that used to cost to you 200 rupees on an MRP basis. Literally, the price was written on those bottles. The chemists or the hospitals, they used to give it to you not for 200 rupees but for 500 rupees or 600 rupees. And this is how much profit the chemists and the pharma companies have made. So COVID was a good thing for them, and they wanted COVID to come again and again and never to leave India. And that is the fact and the bitter truth. Because when everyone is losing, there is a person who is gaining. Similarly, if Russia and Ukraine are facing these commodity prices hikes, like because of the supply chain disruptions, and all the other countries, including India, can export more outside and earn in US dollars. And that can further help in stabilizing the currency as well as per the other countries or companies. Because ultimately we want what? We want the prices of the INR to be stabilized, to increase and not depreciate systematically, or the company should not like devalue it, and we want like stable exports also. Okay, that's all for